Hello and welcome back. Federalist Foster here to talk to you about the Constitution. This is your document overview, and this is by far the most important document of the American government and politics class. So in the description below, I will give you the link to this, which is an access to the document, but it also has a modern day translation, which is very helpful. So we have three enduring understandings for the Constitution. The first one is the Constitution emerged from the debate about the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation as a blueprint for limited government. Most important thing to understand is just that the Articles of Confederation was a flawed form of government, but those flaws and those problems helped us to understand and build a better foundation for the Constitution that we still use today. The idea of that we need three branches, that we need a separation of powers, and that we also need a strong federal government. Establish the goals of the government as well as set up the structure with the three-branch system and the roles within the branches, the government of separation of powers and checks and balances. So another enduring understanding is the Constitution created a competitive policymaking process to ensure the people's will is represented and that freedom is preserved. Basically, the idea of that we have this system of policymaking that involves many actors, that involves many people that get involved in our laws and our policy. Yes, Congress writes the laws, and the president then can veto those bills if they don't like the laws that they're writing. And that we have an indirect influence because we get to elect, through a Republican form of government, elect our representatives. And if we don't like the laws that they're writing, then it's our job to elect new leaders. So it established the role of each branch in policymaking. It developed a complicated bill process in that you have to have two houses, a bicameral legislature, so two houses that are debating the bill, that are making it better, making sure that all parts of society are included in this bill and are being benefited by new laws and policies that Congress is making. Also to ensure those laws are beneficial to the country and also protect citizens' rights. Last enduring understanding is that federalism reflects the dynamic distribution of power between national and state governments. Basically, to understand that the Constitution also includes the concept of federalism, the idea that the Constitution gives specific powers to the national government. It also doesn't deny states certain powers that can be included in their concurrent powers. And then they also have reserved powers that are included in the 10th Amendment, powers that only belong to them and don't belong to the national government. And anything that the Constitution doesn't deny the states and doesn't grant to the national government is reserved for the states. Those reserved powers are included in the 10th Amendment specifically of the Constitution. So the main ideas in the Constitution, that it outlines the structure of government. It includes three branches with checks and balances. It defines the relationship between the states. It includes an amendment process, a way to change the Constitution. You need 2/3 to propose and 3/4 to ratify. 27 amendments, and it also includes the Bill of Rights, which were those first 10 amendments of the Constitution specifically. Also, don't forget that Federalist Papers 10, 51, 70, and 78 also explain and defend different parts of the Constitution. So your knowledge about those documents can also help you to understand what's in the Constitution. So a quick summary, you have the preamble, which is really just an introduction. You have Article 1, which basically just goes over what Congress looks like, that we have a bicameral legislature with two houses. We have a House and a Senate, a House based on representation and population, a Senate based on equality of the states. Talks about how a bill becomes a law, outlines those specific enumerated powers of Congress. Sometimes we call those expressed powers if they're clearly written down. Includes the Commerce Clause and then also the Necessary and Proper Clause. Also talks about some powers that are denied to Congress. Article 2 goes over the presidency, basically the term, the qualification, the duties, and the powers of the presidency. Article 3 talks about the courts and includes a specific description of that we should have one Supreme Court. Article 4 talks about the individual states and what is their relationship to the federal government. Article 5 talks about how we amend our Constitution, how we make changes. Article 6 includes the Supremacy Clause, that the Constitution and the laws of the Congress and the federal government are the supreme law of the land and above the states. And then Article 7 just talks about how this new Constitution will be ratified by the states. So the Bill of Rights includes the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. Important ones would be the First Amendment, which includes speech, religion, press, assembly, and petition. Also important would be the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. Fourth Amendment, the right against illegal search and seizure. That requires police to get a warrant if they want to search your home. 5 and 6 are rights of the accused. 8 would be no cruel and unusual punishment. 9 basically says that just because we listed all of these rights doesn't mean that these are the only rights that we have other rights that may not have been enumerated. And then the 10th Amendment basically just is the language for reserved powers of the states. So the additional amendments, we don't need to know all of them, so let's go over the important ones that we do need to know. Definitely number 14, which defines citizenships. It limits states from violating equal protection and also includes due process. So it's the source for selective incorporation. Number 15, which basically says that no limiting voting rights based on race. Number 17, which basically provided for direct election of senators. So now we elect our senators directly through popular vote. Before it was through the state legislatures. Number 19, gave women the right to vote. Number 22, limited the president's terms to only 2 terms. So the most that a president is allowed to serve is 2 presidential terms. 24 basically says poll taxes no more. So poll taxes are not allowed in elections, state or federal. And then 26, young votes in the mix. This basically lowered the voting age, the federal voting age and state voting age to 18 across all states. So how could we use this document? There are a lot of different sources. So I did include a few here in some bullet points, but definitely this is not a limited list. It's very similar to the 9th Amendment. Just because it's not listed doesn't mean that it couldn't be used, because the Constitution is the lifeblood of our course. So we could connect to the system of separation of powers and checks and balances. We could explain how weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation were addressed in the Constitution. We could connect to the concept of federalism and the distribution of power between the states and the federal government. We also could address how voting rights were expanded, specifically through Amendments 15, 17, 19, 24, and 26. We could also address how presidential power was limited, specifically by the 22nd Amendment. We could also explain how the people's will is represented through a Republican form of government, that we elect our leaders to represent us. And we could also explain how the Constitution promotes a policymaking process that is beneficial to all citizens. All right, guys, so that's it for my document overview. Like I said, there's many other ways that we can use the Constitution because it has so many important things inside of it that we use in and out throughout our course. Please comment down below if you have any questions. Have a great day, and always keep calm and Viking on.